Dear students, will in this session we'll start with liquidation of companies, that is chapter 4 that I already explained you in the previous class, and just I will brush up the important points and just we'll move on. Okay, a company is established as per the Companies Act of India, and likewise it has to close down, or the life of the company is to be ended, or it has to be wound up as per the provisions of Companies Act only. And this process, so the entire process of closing down the company or winding up of a company is termed as liquidation or winding up of a company. There are three types of winding up of a company. The first type is called as compulsory winding up. Compulsory winding up is a winding up by the court of law where the decision is taken by the central government in order to close down the company in case of any violation of any or excesses of any provisions of Companies Act and other decisions taken by the government. And there is one more type of wind up called as voluntary winding up. Under voluntary winding up, this is a winding up which is taken by the decision of either the members of the company or by the creditors of the company. The members of the company will take a decision to close down the company when the company is a solvent company, and the creditors will take up the decision to close the company when the company becomes insolvent. And we already know the meaning of solvent and insolvent companies. A solvent company is a company which is able to pay all its credits, that is all its outside liabilities in full, is called as a solvent company. If the company is not able to pay its debts to the outsiders, then it is called as an insolvent company. And these are the two types of company, the winding up of companies as per the voluntary decision taken by either the members or creditors of the company. And there is one more winding up called as voluntary winding up under the supervision of the court. In this kind of a winding up of a company, it may be either members voluntary winding up or creditors voluntary winding up, but the court will appoint a person called as a liquidator in order to supervise the winding up process. And this kind of a winding up of is termed as voluntary winding up of the company. And let us go further to know who is a liquidator. A liquidator is an official who is appointed by the court in order to conduct the process of winding up. He will take the initiative and he will enforce all the activities or whatever is required in order to wind up the company and close down the company. And coming to the major task of the liquidator, he has to sell all the assets. That means he has to realize the assets by selling the assets of the company in the market, and out of the sale proceeds of the assets of the company, he has to make the payments to all the creditors, or he has to repay the debts of the creditors which are borrowed by the company from the outsiders. And this is the major task of the liquidator of a company. And at the time of liquidation of the company, the liquidator has to submit his statement. It is called as liquidator's final statement of account, which is nothing but an account which shows the sale proceeds of the company and as well as the repayments made to the creditors of the company. And this is termed as liquidator's final statement of account. The liquidator's final statement account is not exactly as an account, but it is actually a statement. So that is the reason on the left hand side we don't call it as a debit side and credit side, but it is termed as left hand side and right hand side. So wherein we'll show the receipts on the left hand side and payments on the right hand side. And the receipts and payments to be shown in the liquidator's final statement of account has a particular order in which it has to be shown. And the order of payment of showing the different aspects of the liquidator's final statement of is like this. On the left hand side, that is the receipt side of the statement, we have to first of all show the cash in hand and then the cash at bank. Both cash in hand and cash at bank does not require any realization, is it not? So it is always there in the company itself. So therefore no sale and realization of cash is there always. So therefore we directly take it as cash in hand and cash at bank. And then the other assets, any other kind of asset is to be realized. That means it has to be sold in the market and the sale proceeds are to be realized by the liquidator. And those assets are termed as assets realized here. And all the different assets whichever is given or whichever is realized by him is shown under this head. And the other one is the surplus from the secured creditors. This is to be clearly understood. Surplus from secured creditors is sometimes, so whenever the creditors are given the one of the assets as the security, the creditors themselves, they will sell the assets and they will keep whatever the amount which is due to them, and the balance is to be recovered by the liquidator, and this is termed as surplus realized from the secured creditors. And then the calls in arrears, the next item to be shown is called as calls in arrears. Calls in arrears is nothing but which is a due which is to be paid by the shareholders of the company. Suppose if the company has already made a call on the shares and the shareholders have not paid the calls in full, in that case if there is any calls in arrears, it is to be recovered at the time of liquidation in order to create or in order to form the required amount for the payments of the debtors. And the other one is the amount received from the partly paid shares. Amount received from partly paid share is nothing but the amount realized from the shareholders who are partly paid on the shares. So whenever if the receipts of the company is not sufficient, the liquidator has an authority to make a call on the shares, on the partly paid up shares, and then he can recover the amount. And coming to the payment side, which is very important here. So first of all, we'll start with the first order of payment is the secured creditors. Secured creditors are those creditors, as I already told you, secured creditors are those creditors to whom one of the asset is given as a security. So that means their whatever the credit given by them to the company is secured by the one of the assets given as a security. So they are called as secured creditors, which is the first payment to be shown on the payment side. And the second one is the liquidation expenses. All those expenses which are met by the liquidator in order to complete the process of liquidation is called as liquidation expenses. And maybe say like it may be stamp charges or the court charges or whatever is incurred in order to sell the assets. All these expenses are put together and it is termed as liquidation expenditure, which is the second head. The second item should be shown on the payment side. And the third item is the liquidator's remuneration. Liquidator is an official who is appointed by the court of law, and he will have to be paid a remuneration on a percentage basis usually. Sometimes he may also be given a fixed remuneration also. So whatever is paid to him is to be shown under liquidator's remuneration. Usually he will be paid commission on 3 accounts. That is on the assets realized by him, whatever the asset that is realized by him by the selling of the assets of the company. On that amount, he has to be paid a certain percentage of commission, whichever is agreed upon with the company, and that is shown as a first item here. And the second one is on the amount paid to unsecured creditors. So whatever the amount made, whatever the amount he will pay to the unsecured creditors at the end of the completion of the liquidation process. On that amount also he is eligible to get a rate of commission, which is called as amount paid, the commission paid on the amount paid to unsecured creditors. And the other payment is on the amount paid to shareholders of the company. Suppose if the receipts are sufficient and if the company is able to make the payment to the shareholders to return their whatever the investments made by them, either by the preference shareholders or equity shareholders, so that will be the amount paid to the shareholders. On that amount also he is entitled to receive a commission if it is agreed upon by the company with him at the time of liquidation process. And the next order of payment is all these three put together is called as the liquidator's remuneration, which is shown in the outer column. And the next payment is the debentures having a floating charge. Debentures having a floating charge is nothing but the debentures having a right or lien on all the assets of the company, and those debentures will be paid next, and it is shown here. And the other one is the next payment is outstanding interest on debentures. If there is any outstanding interest to be paid to the debenture holders, and it is taken immediately after the payment of debentures, debenture capital. And the next one is preferential creditors. Preferential creditors is a kind of creditors, so wherein they have a preference over the payment of their dues over the other unsecured creditors. Preferential creditors and other unsecured creditors both come under the same category called as unsecured creditors. They come under the same category called as unsecured creditors, but only the preferential creditors will have a priority in the repayment as far as the other unsecured creditors are compared. So therefore it is taken previous to other unsecured creditors. And then the other unsecured creditors wherein either they don't have the security or even the preference as far as the payment is concerned, and it is taken after the payment is made to preferential creditors. And then when these two types of unsecured creditors are paid, and the next payment is calls in advance. If the company has received any calls in advance at the time of the issue of shares itself, in that case the calls received in advance is paid. But of course this is on a certain condition that if the total receipt is available, and then only this amount is paid to the shareholders of the company. And then arrears of cumulative preference shares. Arrears of cumulative preference shares is nothing but the arrears which is accumulated, which is to be paid by the company to the cumulative preference shares. And if there is any kind of cumulative preference shares in the company, and if the arrears are to be paid to them, that is dividend arrears are to be paid, it is paid immediately after calls in advance. And then the preference share capital itself, and then the equity share capital, both these payments are made only in the case